Today I'm going to talk about the main reason why most guys struggle with women. When I was younger, it used to perplex me why some people were cool and some people weren't. I would watch the guys who never struggled to connect with others and women seemed to be more interested in. They always seemed to be confident, charismatic, calm. They just always seemed to know what to say, how to have fun and tease and banter and things like this. Where myself, I found that I always struggled when it came to connecting with others and expressing myself. I just felt like this socially bumbling chode. I always wondered, what is it that makes some guys inherently cool and others not? See, I thought maybe it was looks, but I noticed even the guys who weren't necessarily that good looking, if they were charismatic and confident, they still seem to get a lot of attention from women. So I was like, okay, obviously my assumption there is incorrect. What is it that makes some guys just cool and others not? And why is it that the guys who struggle with expressing themselves and the guys who aren't as cool seem to just naturally struggle more with women? Now, in this video, I'm going to be doing a lot of generalizing. Understand there is far more variables when it comes to female mate selection than just social intelligence alone. But I've noticed over the years that social intelligence seems to be the most correlated personality trait with desirability to women when it comes to short-term and long-term mating preferences. So in this video, I'm going to share with you exactly why some guys are cool and why others aren't. Now, ever since starting this journey back in 2015 of improving my dating life, learning to be more confident and charismatic, the most common trait that I see in guys who do struggle with women tends to be an underlying low self-esteem. So feelings of unworthiness, of not feeling good enough, of feeling like you don't have value. Now, where do these feelings come from? Usually it's created from negative social feedback, whether that negative social feedback came from your parents, from your peers, your superiors, wherever it did come from, it's created this belief in yourself. You have ingrained it in your psyche from a young age that you have no value, or you have low value, that you're unworthy, that you're unlovable, whatever it might be, or that you are just incapable. Now, there's many different personality traits that this negative social feedback manifests as. However, there are primary ones that we will notice that make you undesirable. So for example, you become people-pleasing. Why is this? Because from a young age, you were given a lot of negative social feedback when you were to express yourself. So you learned that the only way that you were desirable, or the only way that you were deserving of love, was to please others. Now, this is also very common with people who had hypercritical parents. So a hypercritical parent will make someone feel like they are always incompetent, that they aren't capable of achieving anything, of doing anything without the help of others. They create this deep-seated feeling in themselves that makes them feel like whatever they do is not good enough, or whoever they are is not good enough. And they're always trying to chase validation from others because they were so constantly devalidated by their parents, or felt like they were inferior by their parents, that they're always looking externally for people to approve of themselves. So it creates this deep-seated feeling of inadequacy and makes them lack trust in themselves and their own judgment. So what does this mean? This is the exact antithesis of confidence. It's the exact opposite of confidence. See, confidence is a natural trust in oneself that everything's going to be okay and that you are competent. That is where confidence comes from. However, the lack of confidence comes from a feeling of deep inherent incompetence, like you are incapable and you're always looking externally for other people's opinions or beliefs as to create your own worldview, and you just don't trust yourself. And lacking self-trust is a huge factor in lacking confidence, because how can someone express themselves honestly and authentically without genuinely trusting in themselves and their own judgment? Now, let's talk about the psychological effects of bullying. This is the negative social feedback from your peers in a way that makes you feel like you are low in social status, that you are at the bottom of the social hierarchy. And this then ingrains this feeling in yourself that you are of lower value than other people around you. This creates an underlying long-term feeling in yourself, even into adulthood, that when you meet others, you are lower in the social hierarchy than those people, that you have less value than those people, or that those people's needs are more important than your own. And this culminates in you being, again, more people-pleasing, more supplicating, and more sensitive. Now, this is funny. Because you were potentially given so much negative social trauma at a young age, you begin to associate social environments with danger. And this makes us really sensitive to negative social cues. to a point where you start to interpret neutral and even sometimes positive social cues as negative, or at least more negative than they actually are. And because you associate social environments with danger, you have an underlying social anxiety. So you try to remove yourself from social environments, you isolate yourself, you do not enjoy social environments as much because you're always trying to micromanage your positioning in the social hierarchy. And you're just more likely to interpret neutral and positive social cues as more negative than they actually are. And studies do show that people who have this underlying social trauma assume that they are less likable than they actually are, thus more likely to remove themselves from social environments, even when people are giving them positive feedback and actively enjoying their company. They just assume that they are less likable than they are or less welcome than they are, and this makes them less likely to make friends and create connections. And specifically with women, this also makes them more likely to reject themselves or not even try. Now, these are just a couple of ways that social trauma from a young age creates this deep-seated feeling of inadequacy in ourselves and makes us struggle with social environments as an adult. Now, I'm not going to cover everything here because there is a lot more to this, and I go into heaps of depth about this exact topic in our video course, Unleashed. Now, how does this social trauma manifest as lower levels of social intelligence at an older age? This is a theory that I've been playing around with for a long time, and I'm going to try to articulate it as best I can right now. This is how it works. From a young age, we're given this negative social feedback. This makes us more self-conscious. See, it makes us look more at ourselves. We start to worry about how we're being perceived, how people are looking at us, how we're being treated, and we start always looking internally at ourselves. If this happens from a young age, we begin to miss a lot of social cues that are going on around us. Because we're being so self-conscious, we're not being conscious of our surroundings, of others. We're not seeing those minute details in people's responses to what we're saying. We're not seeing how people are reacting to other people's behaviors. This creates a social skills gap between the people who have lower self-esteem and higher self-esteem, because the people who have higher self-esteem, they're more focused on what's happening in front of them. They're a bit more present and they're more aware of those little social nuances when they are communicating with others. And this makes them more skillful communicators in the long run. So over time, they get more positive social feedback. This is the people who have high self-esteem. They get more positive social feedback, which makes them less self-conscious, more aware of what's going on around them, learning more and improving their social skills more over time. Whereas the people who are lower in self-esteem, over time, are becoming more self-conscious, thus they miss more of these social cues. Thus, because they're missing more of these little social details, they start to get more negative peer feedback, which then perpetuates this feeling of inadequacy, which makes them even more self-conscious, which then makes them even less socially intelligent, which gives them more negative social feedback, and then the cycle continues. So over time, the people with high self-esteem end up far eclipsing the people with low self-esteem when it comes to the social skills gaps. You know how there's a wealth gap in certain countries where a small minority of the people have most of the wealth and then the majority of people have very little of the wealth? This is kind of a similar thing where people who have low self-esteem end up having very little or much lower levels of social intelligence than the people who started with high self-esteem. This gap only becomes larger the older guys get, unless they become aware of this and start working on their social intelligence. And this is where things change. See, the people who have higher levels of social intelligence, they just tend to be better with people. They're better at connecting with others because they understand people better and they understand how their actions are making people feel. They see those little micro expressions and micro behaviors in others that allow them to understand and calibrate better in social environments. Where the guys who have lower levels of social intelligence tend to miss a lot of these details. Thus, they're more likely to find themselves being rejected, having trouble connecting with others, and just generally having a harder time when it comes to social environments. How do we change this? How do we start to close the gap between the guys who have high self-esteem and high levels of social intelligence, the ones who are naturally more charismatic, confident, expressive, and the guys who have low levels of social intelligence and more likely to have lower self-esteem? So the first step to social intelligence is self-awareness. What is it that you're struggling from? Are you isolating yourself from social environments because you're associating them with danger? Are you a people pleaser? Are you putting other people's needs before your own? Are you unable to express yourself confidently and charismatically or authentically because you just don't trust yourself or your judgment and you're too worried about what other people think? So that's the first step. It's being aware of what your natural tendencies are and being aware of the fact that you probably don't have an objective view of reality and you're probably interpreting social environments more negatively than than they actually are, or you're interpreting your own likability as lower than you actually are. Now, when you do come to the realization that you don't have an objective, genuine view of reality, you need to change the way you see the world. See, at the moment, you probably have a very negative view of the world, or at least more negative than it actually is. And becoming aware of this, you need to start reframing things in your mind in a more positive manner. Start seeing the world through a more positive lens. People are not out to get you. The world is a safe place. Everyone wants to connect. And the more you become aware of your own natural tendencies and how you think, the more you realize that a lot of other people feel the exact same way. A lot of times you might feel awkward in yourself. You might have an awkward silence, or someone's not giving you the reaction that you expected. A lot of the time, they might actually be going through the exact same feeling that you are. So let me just give you a basic example. Let's say you approach a cute girl on the street. You're practicing cold approach. She's a little anxious. She's a little standoffish. She's looking around. She's looking a little nervous. You just assume, oh, this girl hates me. She's not attracted to me. She's creeped out. Where in reality, a lot of the time when you are getting these kind of reactions, she is just feeling a little bit of social pressure herself. See, just like you get approach anxiety, girls get getting approached anxiety, and they feel anxious. They don't want to make a bad impression. And some girls would prefer to just remove themselves from a situation where they could potentially embarrass themselves than stay and connect with a person where in reality, they could have had a really good time meeting that person. And sometimes it's your job as a man to push through that initial discomfort and create a connection, allow a connection to happen. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't want you to become absolutely clueless. If you're getting a certain reaction a lot of times in a row, then yes, you want to sit back and be like, okay, what might I be doing that is creating this reaction? And that is why it's so important at this point in your development to start reversing that lower levels of social intelligence. And that's what we're going to get to in this next step. You need to start socializing more because you are starting, unfortunately, from a lower level of social awareness. It's your job to start closing this gap. And the only way to do that is to put yourself in as much social environments as possible. Now, unfortunately, we do often have jobs or a life that isn't always conducive to being in a social environment a lot of the time, but that's fine. You need to find time, whether it be saying hello to every single person you walk past, whether it be you being friendly to the cashier, whatever it might be, you need to start being social as much as you possibly can. If you're invited to something on the weekend, go. If you have some spare time, go and be social, connect with others, go and make friends, create a social circle, join whatever kind of social group that you desire to be a part of, whether it be a CrossFit gym or a board game group. I don't care. You just need to start being social more. This is the first step. Be more social. And also, you're going to find because you're naturally more likely to be more shy, reserved, submissive, you need to start expressing yourself more. So I want you to do little things throughout your day, like just saying hello to every single person you pass. You need to be friendly to everyone. The more you acknowledge people, the more positive feedback you're going to get. And the more you're going to reinforce this feeling deep in you that the world is a safe place, that people want to connect with others, and that everyone is mostly friendly. People are not out to get you, I promise you. So start being social. Now, for most guys, the reason why they want to improve their social intelligence is to get better with women. And the number one best way to start improving your dating life is to practice cold approach. You need to go out and meet women. And I mean, go out and approach them. I don't mean get out your phone and start swiping. This does not improve your social skills. The only way to improve your social skills is to put yourself in more social environments. And the beauty of cold approach is you are forced to be social from the get-go. The more social situations you throw yourself into, in terms of the more girls that you approach, the more people that you start a conversation with, the better you will inherently get at cold approach. The beauty of cold approach is the more you do it, the better you get at it. You cannot do a shitload of cold approaches and not improve your social intelligence and your overall results over time. Now, depending on where you're coming from, you might struggle more than others at first. That is a reality. Wherever you're coming from, you can't just give up because you're starting from a lower place than someone else. Yeah, sure, life isn't fair, but you can either give up or start working on yourself. Those are your only options. It's either be lonely and unhappy or start working on yourself and deal with the fact that you're going to have some uncomfortable conversations at times. And that is going to be part of the process. You're going to have to deal with rejection. You're going to have to deal with getting comfortable with negative social feedback once more. You're going to realize no matter how much social feedback you get of whatever kind it is going to kill you. The world is a safe place. You're going to be fine. And the more comfortable you get expressing yourself, putting yourself out there, and meeting new people, the more comfortable you're going to become and the better you're going to get at connecting with others. It is inevitable. I implore you, please start practicing cold approach as soon as you possibly can. And the more you practice being social, the more social momentum, we call it, you will build over time. For someone, if you go out and make a single approach once a week, that's better than nothing, but it's obviously not going to be nearly as good as you making 20, 30, 40, 50 approaches a week. If you do 50 approaches a week, you're going to get much better, much quicker. It's just how it is. You're taking 50 times the action of the guy who's making one approach a week. You're probably going to improve at higher than 50 times the pace of the other guy. Now, I know it seems simple, but it's just part of the process. Now, obviously, the fastest way to get good at cold approach and start meeting the kind of goals that you want is to hire a coach who has gone through what you've gone through, who has helped multiple clients and has evidence of them getting those clients the results that you want and improving their social skills and their dating lives. This is the fastest way to improve your skills at cold approach, because you have someone who can give you the correct interpretation of the social situations that you're putting yourself into, and you're not always relying on your potentially flawed view of what is happening in front of you. But again, you want to find a good dating coach, a good coach who has a lot of evidence of a lot of clients having the results that you want, because my friend, there is a lot of bullshit advice out there, and I would say that sometimes it can be more detrimental to listen to this bad advice and take it on than for you to just go out and do it yourself. But if you find a good coach, you can speed up this process 100-fold. I can tell you for sure, there is absolutely zero chance that I would have made it past those early stages of my development without having hired a great coach and having great mentors on top of that. If you want to get good at this as quickly as possible, find a coach. I'm not saying it needs to be us. There are a lot of good coaches out there, but also there are a lot of absolutely terrible coaches too. So be aware of that. But that is the fastest way to improve your social skills and your dating life. Again, when it comes to cold approach, you are putting yourself in front of people over and over and over again. You cannot not get better, and you cannot not get more comfortable in social environments. So guys, that is cold approach. Now, the next piece of advice I want to give you is to shift your focus. From a young age, you've learned to shift your focus on yourself, to become self-conscious, worrying about what do people think about me? Am I safe here? Me, 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 me. And what we want to do is shift our focus from ourselves to the person in front of us. Stop focusing so much on yourself. Stop being so selfish and focus on the human being in front of you. This is going to speed up the development of your social skills so much faster, because you're going to start becoming unconsciously aware of these little social cues that you see. See, the human mind is a pattern recognizer. And the more patterns we start to unconsciously see, the more aware we become. And you start to get better at understanding people as well. So shift your focus from yourself to the person in front of you. Focus purely on them. How are they feeling? How are they reacting? Who is this person? And this is a great segue onto my next point, which is be curious. See, studies have shown that the #1 most likable trait in a human being is curiosity. And not about the world in general, it's about the person sitting in front of them. If you are curious about the person in front of you, you're more likely to ask questions that allow you to get to know them. And the more questions you ask that person to get to know that person, the more patterns you start recognizing in people, and the better your social intelligence innately becomes. So what I want you to do is start to implement what we call the curiosity mindset. I want you to always think, what am I curious about this person? How did this person become who they are? What is it that makes them them? You're almost like a detective, but most importantly, you want to be genuinely curious about them. A lot of the time we f it up because we're like, how does it affect me? Why would I care about this person in front of me? What? I don't really care. I want X from this person. Well, yeah, of course you're not likable. You're selfish as f. No one wants to be around someone who only cares about themselves. What makes you likable is being more egalitarian, being more aware of what other people's needs and wants are. Not that you're putting them above you, but being understanding of people. So the more curious you are about others, the better you understand them. See, it's funny. I've noticed people who are naturally people-pleasing, ironically, don't ask nearly as many personal questions about other people. They're more so relating things back to themselves because they're too worried about having that person like them. Now, yes, you want to every now and then relate things that person says back to you, but most of the time you should be asking them questions about themselves. personal questions, not just like, what food do you like? What's your favorite color? More of a personal question is, for instance, say you're talking about what they're doing for work and asking them a question like, what got them into that? Why do they love it so much? If they don't love it, why don't they love it? Why don't they do other things? Instead of asking them what their hobbies are, also ask why that is their hobby, what they enjoy about it so much. So you want to find out who this person is and what makes them that way. And you can't find that out without asking personal questions. So I want you to implement the curiosity mindset. Be curious about every single person that you meet. Who are they and what makes them the way they are? And ironically, when you are someone who naturally is curious about others, women can't help but interpret this as you being a person who has standards. They're not used to people asking them these personal questions and actually getting to know them. Have you ever heard a woman say, oh, you know, I enjoyed the date, but he never really was curious about me, or he just kept talking about himself the whole time. He never asked me a question. Now, when it comes to human beings, sure, we're all inherently somewhat narcissistic, but we also need to be aware of the other person in front of us. The more you ask this girl questions and try to find out who she is, the more she feels like, oh, this guy actually wants to find out who I am. He's asking me questions most people don't ask me. And that makes you come from what we call a buyer dynamic. You are the one assessing her for whether she meets your standards. And even if you're just coming from a place of curiosity, she can't help but feel like you're a man who has standards and you are assessing her to a degree. And that is the frame you want to start coming from as well on your dates and when you're meeting someone is, okay, they're pretty, but what do I like about them? Is there anything more to this person? Don't be blinded by people's beauty. You want to find out what's underneath the beauty. And the more you assess that person for whether you like them, the more likely you are to attract that person into your life. Even if your goal isn't necessarily to attract that person, you are more likely to be inherently more desirable because of the fact that you are just curious. And don't forget that studies have shown that a natural curiosity, someone asking personal questions, is the most likable trait in another person. And the more you ask people questions, the more people you meet, the more people you get to know, the more curious you are, the more likely you are to start recognizing patterns in people and behaviors and build your social intelligence. And you can get to a point where you are far more socially intelligent than those guys who started with high self-esteem. And over time, the more comfortable you get in social environments, and the more you realize that social environments are a safe and enjoyable and fun place, people just want to connect, the more you're going to build your self-esteem as well. And the more you're going to trust yourself because you're going to become more competent in social environments. See, a lot of the time, people go, oh, I just want to be confident, but what creates confidence is competence. If you are not competent in social environments, you feel incompetent, like you are unlikable, that you don't know what you're doing, then of course you're going to feel like you're lacking confidence because you don't actually have the competence to allow you to feel confident in those environments. So the more you build your social repertoire, the more you practice cold approach, the better you get at socializing, the better you get with women, the more confident you're going to innately become as well. More expressive, more charismatic. What does this net you? This nets you more friends, more ability to attract the kind of women into your life that you want, and also networking and in business environments as well. The economy itself, our overall world is social, and the better you become at socializing, the more just inherently attractive you will become to women, your superiors, to everyone. People want to be around someone who is socially intelligent, someone who is expressive and confident in social environments as well. It's going to help you in all areas of your life. In the end, the only thing we have is memories, and usually what makes a moment more enjoyable is being able to spend it with the kind of people we want to spend it with. And those connections we make are often the most beautiful moments in our lives, the most memorable ones. That's why I love what we do here so much, because we help guys unlock their genuine best versions of their lives and have the kind of connections that they want and have the experiences they want as well. This is why we also focus so heavily on something we call timeline shifting on our programs. See, the process of timeline shifting is through reframing the way you see the world. We have had some clients have insane transformations in just a couple of days purely through changing the way that they see the world. Where beforehand dating was difficult, all of a sudden it becomes the easiest thing in the world. Socializing and expressing themselves becomes so simple, and bringing new people into their lives, and that's because they have changed the way they see the world. See, everything starts with how we interpret the world around us, and the way we interpret the world around us also influences what we can create in our physical reality. And the better you view the world around you, the more likely you are to manifest what you want into your life and the kind of connections as well. This is something we heavily focus on in our programs. We also teach a lot of it in our Unleashed video course. I'm gonna leave you here right now. I know that there's a lot of generalizing that happened in this video, and there's a lot more to female sexual selection than just social intelligence. But again, social intelligence tends to be across the board the most selected for trait in men. Thank you for watching. I'm Ben Sterling. If you're looking to potentially work with us, then make sure to click the link in our description below and jump on a free consultation call with either myself, Alex, or one of our team members. If you haven't joined our Facebook group yet, make sure to do it. Make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment, helps us with the algorithm. But I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.